This is the countdown to the Japanese Grand Prix, and today being a Wednesday, the 25th of March in 2026, it means that we only have 4 days to the Japanese Grand Prix, which is going to take place on Sunday, the 29th day of March at Suzuka Circuit. And the Japanese Grand Prix is actually the third round or the third race of the Formula One season in 2026, coming after the first 2 races which were held in Australia and in China. And since there has been almost a 2-week break between the Chinese Grand Prix and now the Japanese Grand Prix, it means that teams have had an opportunity to actually maybe look at the data they have already collected over those 2 race weekends and maybe make a few changes here and there as they come into the race weekend in Japan. And probably this explains why there are a number of upgrades that are expected this coming weekend, with the teams having been able to come up with solutions to solve some of the problems that they at least witnessed in Australia and in China. And I think that's a good thing because it means that teams are now fully embarked on a development kind of a race where they are going to continue improving the packages that they have, trying to extract as much performance as they can, and hoping to close the gap that exists between them and the teams that are ahead of them. As the race weekend in Japan approaches, there are a lot of things that are happening, and in this particular video I want to mention 3 things that you should be able to look out for, or 3 things or 3 stories that are emerging as the race weekend in Japan starts. Because being a Wednesday, you can almost say that we are almost getting there because you only have just a few days before the official race weekend program starts. If this is the first time that you and I are meeting, I am Joe, and I would really appreciate it if you would consider subscribing to this YouTube channel. The first thing that you need to be aware of, or which is basically a benchmark as the race weekend in Japan starts, is that the championship battle will be continuing this weekend. And as of now, at least we have George Russell leading the Drivers' Championship and Mercedes leading the Constructors' Championship. And what you can expect this weekend is that George Russell as well as the Mercedes F1 team will actually be working very hard to ensure that they can maintain leadership of both championships. And of course, you can also expect that there will be a bit of competition, let's say for the Drivers' Championship, coming from at least Kimi Antonelli, who showed that he can actually be able to win a race, having won the Chinese Grand Prix. And that would of course change dynamics if he was to win the Japanese Grand Prix, because that would actually give him the leadership of the Drivers' Championship. Now, when it comes to the Constructors' Championship, the closest challenger to Mercedes is actually Ferrari. And there seems to be an existing gap between Ferrari and Mercedes, and that's something that Ferrari are working hard towards closing. And possibly over the next couple of races, we might see also a change of hands when it comes to the Constructors' Championship if Ferrari can be able to actually beat or defeat Mercedes. The second thing that might be important to actually look out for when it comes to the race weekend in Japan is that some teams are actually bringing upgrades or introducing upgrades to their packages this particular weekend. And that's going to be interesting to see what teams actually bring as part of their upgrades. Because it's worth noting that the teams so far have had a 2-week break from the time we had the Chinese Grand Prix, and that has given them time to look into the data that they have collected and probably start understanding better some of the issues that they are facing. And it is hoped or assumed that some of the packages being introduced this particular weekend is part of an ongoing development program of the various teams, trying to ensure that they can be able to close the gaps on the teams that are ahead of them. They are also trying to solve the problems that they have seen or the problems that their cars have in terms of the limitations of what they can be able to do. and also trying to improve the performance given that they have data from 2 tracks. And it is important to also note that the Suzuka circuit is very different in terms of character and expectations as compared to the track in Australia and in China. And that means that teams will be bringing some of the upgrades in Japan specifically to deal with the circuit in Japan. And that's part of this game of Formula One, where teams continue to understand their packages and continue to try to extract as much performance as they can, even if it means being specific to a particular track or so. However, it is also important to realize that given that we have only had 2 races and the Japanese Grand Prix is the 3rd race of this particular season, you may not expect a lot of upgrades or major upgrades. And in fact, most of the major upgrades are expected at Miami Grand Prix or the race weekend in Miami. And this even becomes interesting when you consider that 2 races have been cancelled that were supposed to happen in April, and that is the Bahrain Grand Prix and the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, meaning teams are going to have 5 weeks between the Japanese Grand Prix and the next race in Miami. And that's enough time for teams to actually be able to create or develop whatever parts that they need to develop to add into the package that they have by the time we get to the race weekend, or at least introduce them during the race weekend in Miami. The third storyline or topic that you might be aware of coming into the Japanese Grand Prix relates to the engines or the power units. And this is because in this year's regulations, or in the 2026 Formula One regulations, this is one thing that is being regulated under a mechanism that is being referred to as ADUO, or Additional Development and Upgrades Opportunities. And what this means is that there is actually a mechanism that the manufacturers approved and that is in place to ensure that there isn't much huge difference between the power units or what the engines can be able to deliver on track. And there is, a percentage point on how that is supposed to be implemented. And that was supposed to be, to start being reviewed after a few races in the year. And with the 2 races now out of question, that being Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, there are conversations that review would actually maybe be brought forward, meaning that FIA would review that earlier and probably give those teams that are still not within the parameters as they have been indicated an opportunity to actually improve their power units. And this is one thing that Ferrari is also relying on, because it is assumed, or there are conversations and rumors saying that Ferrari are actually behind by over 2% to Mercedes. And that would give them an opportunity to actually upgrade their power units, which they hope would help them to close the gap to Mercedes. And there is, of course, the politics that come with that kind of a situation, because again, some people and rumors are there that Mercedes is not actually using its maximum power, because they also want to maintain the gap and ensure that Ferrari does not get an opportunity to upgrade their power unit. So those are some of the things that probably you should be in the lookout for. Watch what is going to happen. Listen to the conversation from the team principals as well as other people who are talking about these things. And by the end of the weekend, you'll be able to have a clearer picture of what is going on. And this is one of the things that makes Formula One very interesting to me and fun to actually follow, because there's quite a lot of moving parts. And with that kind of, activity, that kind of pace when it comes to development and ensuring that you're improving your package, is what makes all this all fun and enjoyable. And if you are to look at that and apply it to your life or your business, if you're an entrepreneur or a professional, then you can start to see how applicable Formula One is to your little life or to your little business. Because if you have a product or service that you want to bring to the market or to serve your customers with. Then you have a responsibility to continue improving it, continue ensuring that it is good and can be able to deliver on the promise that you have made to your customers or your clients. And that's a continuous kind of a journey. You need to continuously be improving it. And Japan is one of the countries that is known to embrace the ideal of Kaizen, whereby you are supposed to continuously improve what it is that you have. And I think that's the spirit that Formula One is actually applying coming into the race weekend in Japan, and probably a principle that you should also apply in your own life or in your own business, ensuring that each and every day or each and every week you are making an effort towards improving what you have or the situation that you are in towards achieving a better result tomorrow. This is going to be it from me on this particular video, and I do hope that you are looking forward to the race weekend in Japan. Subscribe to this YouTube channel if you have not, and I'm going to see you in my next video.